yet. Hey, everybody.
We're live. We're here.
We're
That's
live
weird.
with a little delay.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. It seems like there's a little delay.
Always a little delay.
But we have excellent connection, so that's good. Welcome to Gogh Art Crate. Thanks for joining. Hey, Kim and Mark. And I also want to welcome Cece as a new member. Thank you for joining the membership. That's how we pay ourselves to do this. It's not a lot, but it's helpful, absolutely. And it does make the job a little more fun, I guess, to get some compensation from it. So thank you very much for helping us out there. And welcome to Thursday night painting. Normally we do this Friday nights, and we just had a funky month. Tomorrow is our daughter's 18th birthday.
Yep.
And so if I did a live stream tomorrow night, I would be the worst mother in the world, according to Greta. So
Did she actually tell you that?
No.
No.
No. But I know that's how it would be. That is absolutely how it would be. So I can't believe our baby is turning 18, and
well,
our house is all adults now.
Seeing the gray in my beard.
We believe it.
I believe it.
We believe it.
Yeah.
So let's go ahead and zoom in and have a look at what we're doing tonight.
Waka, 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 waka.
Thank you. I will tell Greta that. I know, I can't believe it. 18. And already, like tomorrow, I'm taking her to get a tattoo because that's the only thing she wants for her birthday. And I'm like, are you sure? You're only 18. I waited till I was 35 to get my first tattoo just because, not because like I was against it or anything. I just couldn't think of anything that I wanted on my body permanently until about that point in my life.
But nowadays, they don't even think about it like that way.
No.
It's just like, I just want it.
Yep. So tonight's painting is Moonlit Cotton Blooms, and it is it's sort of a upscale redo of a painting that we did in our live studio years ago. Like, I want to say like 2015, 2016.
Somewhere like that.
It was popular, very different, similar vibe, but very different layout. Like we had the rounded brush strokes that are really easy to do that make the painting look maybe a little too simple. So I opted to do more of a kaleidoscope sort of background that's really broken up. So the background is definitely more difficult than the standard like loops and stripes, but I do love the way that turned out. So colors. I actually don't have magenta on our palette tonight, or yellow.
Amazing.
I put way too much black. We really don't use a lot of black. It's just for the stems. And then we have cyan, and we have turquoise, which we haven't used in several months. One of my favorite colors.
We used it last week.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We used it for your painting last week. White and raw sienna.
I gotta
or yellow ochre is what I have on my palette.
We gotta show
Although they look identical.
My yellow ochre. Apparently, Pac-Man had a bad night.
Yeah, I don't know what was going on with Paul's. Well, as soon as I saw that, I was like, that's your palette.
Yeah.
That's your palette. So let's go ahead. I will reference this painting over and over. You guys know that I do that. And I will tell you, this painting goes through a phase. I'm going to show you a photo where it's kind of ugly. So there we go. Look at that. We're going to get to that phase, and you're going to feel like, what in the world am I doing? It's a lot of back and forth blending and changing between colors. So just bear in mind it's going to go through a phase where it's not super pretty. So brushes, I have our 4 favorites. I have a flat 3/4 inch brush, a flat 1/4 inch brush. This one is what, 3/8?
Something like that. And
then a little round brush. You can use any kinds of brushes. You do want to have a nice, larger size flat one. Like, for getting the background really nailed down. You'll be really tired if you don't have a larger brush.
So for those of you saying you let your kids get them at 16,
that's crazy.
We would have let her get one at 16, but Oregon state law prevents it, and so does Washington and Idaho, which are the only 2.
It's crazy to think because Greta would have been fully tatted by now if that were an option. Okay, let's take our biggest brush. Go ahead and dip it in your water cup.
Like, we can't even sign off on it and say it's okay.
Blot it on your towel. And this is one of those weird paintings where we actually start with a little white. And we're not even going to worry necessarily about painting a circle, just a swatch of thick white paint up here.
This is good
If
TV
you
right now.
feel like you want it to be in a circle, you can see mine is automatically going into a circle. Then you can. I'm not like making a circular shape.
I just painted a polar bear in a snowstorm.
And now what we'll do, working quick so this doesn't dry too much. Now this is really big. It's larger than like a large grapefruit because as we blend in darker colors, it gets smaller. So let's go ahead and scrape off some white and mix a little bit of your yellow ochre into it till you get a pale beige. You want it pretty pale, so you might keep adding.
As opposed to ugly pale?
You might keep adding more white. And I've got a lot of paint on my brush from mixing. I don't necessarily want to go right in with a lot of paint for this quite yet. So what I'll do is just wipe it off on my palette, or you can use your paper towel. But if you wipe it off on your palette, then you can actually use it a bit. Mine actually has a streak of turquoise in it that somehow ended up in there, which is funny. But look how I'm really lightly brushing and going into the white part. So suddenly that
Glow done.
white splotch is now faded in, and it can turn completely beige because we do go back later with white. So there, I'm going to tilt my canvas because Larry.
Is it from this?
Let's
No,
see.
it's from...
The big light.
Yeah.
When it's really light color like this.
Did you hear that?
What was that?
That was my stomach.
When it's really light color like this, it is going to be a little glary. So now let's go ahead and mix in some more yellow ochre. Mix it into about half of this. I probably darkened it up a bit too much.
When I do that with the paint, it dries up before I use it.
Oh. The white, yeah, you just have to work faster than feels comfortable. That's hard to do.
Or if you're talking about it dries on your palette, you know, they make some special palettes for acrylic painting that if you guys live in warmer climates, might be good. They actually have like a pad of almost like paper towel that is underneath it, and it helps keep it from drying out.
I've seen that. And you can get an atomizer too to spritz your paint. So you can see I added this around the edges, and my brush strokes are just, I'm not pushing very hard, just doing a quick little flick. I'm holding the brush pretty far back on the handle. And you can occasionally go into that white to soften the edges, but if you don't and it dries, we're going to go back and soften them anyway, so I don't want you to worry too much about that. Go ahead and bring this out and down. We're not going to cover all the way, but we will later on, after we get some turquoise layered on here, we're going to bring some of this light wheat color down into here too. There, I love that look. It could be a sun or the moon, and it's just one of those where it's kind of foggy out and you don't see the exact crystal clear edge. Okay, let's wash the brush. We're going to switch colors. And now we are going to start adding in this color, which can be a little daunting at first because, again, it's going to turn like this. You see how I've got this really pretty blend, and then you see on this one, it suddenly looks like someone came in with scissors and did like construction paper on there. It doesn't look great. It turns slightly greenish because we've got yellow going with blue. So go ahead and clean your brush off. Dry it off.
You guys, if I'm quieter than usual tonight, it's because the last 48 hours have been a little bit of hell for me.
Paul got food poisoning, which is why we were laughing earlier, because his stomach literally went, oh.
It sounded like the introduction to like a THX movie. You know, we go to intro.
It sounded like Snuffleupagus, actually.
It was bad.
So we're gonna mix white, scrape off some white. It's okay if you get some of the beige into it, and which I did. I got more than I planned, but that's okay. And just grab a little bit of turquoise. You see how I just picked up a tiny bit, because you'll see how quickly this changes. And I do need to add more, but I'm just gonna gradually add it. We're just kind of making it light. I don't know if you guys remember Bahama Blue. We used to do a lot of paintings with Bahama Blue. That is the color. And let's go ahead and brush out here for now, just to knock off the paint.
Knock it off.
Knock the paint off the brush. And now you can start bringing it in. And remember, it's going to have a not so pretty blend. It's going to have more of a sharp edge where it meets the beige until we get around to where we can start adding colors on top of colors. My brush strokes are just choppy, all different directions. Again, I'm holding the brush far back.
I can tell you this, it was a great weight loss program.
Yeah, when I had COVID, I didn't have an appetite, and I took off a few pounds, but then the appetite came back, and so did the pounds. Funny how that works.
Well, I lost about 5 pounds in 24 hours, so that's saying something.
You can add a little up here if you want. I think I do have some. Yes, I do. So let's look at the original by comparison. I have a lot of layers going on here, where I did bring turquoise up in here, but then I brought the beige back in on top of it.
Yes, Kim, if you were to use if you've got cyan and your brighter yellow, you could use those two to create a turquoise.
Mm-hmm.
Just be very careful, and white, obviously, too.
You might, I don't know if you have older kits left, but we used this color quite a bit, so you might actually have that in your leftovers if you saved them. But for those of you who shop at Michael's, you can find Bahama Blue in the craft paint section, and it is this exact color.
I can go get a jar, a bottle.
Yeah, I think it's made by Americana, but it's in the craft paint section. It's not in their fine art section.
Yeah, I'll grab a bottle and we can show you guys.
So now I'm going to dip my
brush. We're
brush.
revealing all of our secrets.
Without washing my brush, I'm going to dip it right in the turquoise and bring that around the edges and bring it up. Let them blend. So this is where it does work best if you're working wet on wet paint. So if you had to like step away and then come back, what I would do is like refresh the light minty color and then come in with this so you can blend. Yeah, that's the Bahama Blue. Look at that. We tried to find that exact color, and opacity was the most important thing in several different paint brands, and could never find it. So we always had to buy the craft paint, and we're like, oh, well, it's a beautiful color. It's acrylic paint. It's just not like the highest quality, although it ends up costing us more than like the Blick paint because it's such small bottles.
Yeah, it's not, I wouldn't say it's the lowest quality. It's just
a lot more liquefied.
Yeah, the liquid acrylics are not something that have really been on the scene as far as paint, doing art.
Yeah.
Other than doing crafts, up until basically the sip and paint market came into play.
Well, and then we discovered the Blick turquoise, and we discovered that adding white to it gives you Bahama Blue, and then you basically have two colors to work with. You have the dark turquoise right out of the bottle, and you've got Bahama Blue. And you can always add yellow to, if you add yellow to Bahama Blue, it makes the coolest key lime color.
It really does.
Okay, so I'm just kind of bringing some of this up into the beige just a bit. And I want the sky to get even darker still. Right now it kind of is tie-dye looking. I'm going to take and mix, this is one of my favorite color mixtures. We're going to mix cyan and turquoise. And look at that color. It's just amazing. I love it. I don't even know what I would call it. It's not teal, but it is kind of close. But go ahead and add that in around the edges and you can bring it up. See how I'm occasionally coming up like I don't know what I'm doing? This is like the type of background where you want to just do it before your brain thinks. Because if your brain starts thinking, it's going to tell you to be careful. And we don't have to be careful here.
We ain't got no time for that.
We don't got no time to be careful. So we had our big painting sale. I think we talked about it in our last video last week. That we were doing a big sale of our Gogh box and Vine Go paintings to raise money for our piano at our nonprofit space because she needs a $2,000 overhaul. She's very vintage.
Very vintage.
We just for I think we did 4 hours selling paintings and we made $400 for the piano. So that was pretty cool. I want to thank everyone who was able to come out.
20% of the way there.
And we'll probably have another sale because we have a ton of paintings left over. But I was trying to sell it as the fact that you can decorate your kids' dorm room with these. Because so many of the kids are getting ready to go off to college. Or, well, they get their summer break first, but, you know, that's going to come up.
Jenny's just anxious to get them out the door.
That's not true. Hey, our daughter's not. She's sticking around.
Our offspring is not going to college, so.
She's going to college. She's just going to local PCC.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's looking good, but I do want to bring some more dark up along the side here, so.
And they would be horrified at having a bunch of our Gogh box paintings on their dorm room.
Never. Greta would make their own art.
Exactly.
Okay, you can even dip your brush right in cyan. Because you've got the wet turquoise on there, it's going to mix anyway, but look at that. You get like a darker batch of color in there. I love this part of this kind of painting because I look at it and I'm like, it could be a seascape. Like you could make seaweed and fish. So once you learn how to do this kind of background and experiment especially with this type of coloring, my canvas is like, must be torqued.
Yes, the canvas is torqued, yeah.
But yeah, you can do just about anything. Wherever your imagination takes you. So it should look choppy. It should kind of look like tie-dye and not super blended. If it's doing that, you're doing it right. Again, let's look at that photo. You can see my new one actually looks a little bit nicer than that one. And I brought in some raw sienna in there, or yellow ochre. And I did like that look. Let's do that. Unless you don't like that look. But let's look at the original. I'll show you where that ended up. You can see peekaboo views of it through here. So if you like that greenish look that adds, go ahead and follow along with me. This is one of those paintings that you can create your own style, your own coloring. You could do this painting in all kinds of different colors. Like I was thinking a like soft mauve and purple and grays for the background would be really nice too. Or even like an orange, like super vivid sunset. It could be sunset cotton blooms. It doesn't have to be moonlit.
You do pinks and purples.
So I cleaned my brush off. I'm going to go ahead and just dip it right in the yellow ochre, or if you're using raw sienna. And I love this. I love this bold announcement of color. And working quick so I don't overthink it, but also so that it blends with the wet paint. But mostly so I don't overthink it. These colors naturally go well together, so you're not going to really end up with too much of a problem with muddiness. And what I'm doing here so that I don't overblend things, I'm pressing really lightly. So I'm just doing a quick flick and really light pressure. I purposely will hold my brush far back so I can't, like if you hold your brush way down here, you're going to naturally push harder, and that's going to blend your paint in a little too much. For this, we want just a little strikes of color. There we go. Looking great. It's gonna change lots. The background, I spent a lot of time on the background compared to the original version of this painting that I said we did in like 2016. Because we can do that on the live streams. You guys get a front center view of the canvas. And when we were teaching in the group setting, there were a lot of people that were far away from the instructor. And so didn't necessarily have the ability to see everything we were doing up close and personal like you guys do.
True that.
So let's go back. I cleaned my brush. And let's go back. Let's see, I'm trying to choose what I want to do. Let's go back to this light, the white and turquoise mixed together, or Bahama blue, I kept calling it. I think I need to make a little bit more. Doesn't have to be the exact same shade. And I'm just sort of flicking that color in. Sometimes I'll do this little curved, like, almost like an X. Like here, let me do it on my palette so you know what I'm talking about. So like this. Oh, I picked up black, look at that. So sometimes I do brush strokes like that. It's a good way of getting that choppy background, throwing a different style of brush stroke in there, and also keeping yourself from pushing too hard. So for that I use the thin edge of the brush. Let's bring this up. Let your brush run out of paint as you come up a little. And this is a good part where I could bring some dabs of that color over here and soften up any weird edges. Bring this down here. It's going to mix with your yellow ochre, but it mixes nice. They play nice together. I feel like as I get out here, I want to actually add a little more turquoise to the white so that I'm not bringing so much light color away from the moon. It should feel like it's sort of dissipating.
Oh, that's the moon?
Yeah, it's called Moonlit Cotton Blooms. But you could change the name of it if you wanted to do the sun.
It's fine.
All right. Don't worry about any brush stroke that you put on that has color that maybe you don't vibe with too much, because I said earlier there's a lot of back and forth. There's a lot of switching back to this color from this color and layering. So at this point, going forward, you could completely change your color variation down here. Like I threw some light turquoise in. I don't necessarily know that I like it that far out there. I feel like it's kind of maybe commanding more attention than I want. So in that case, what I would do is I'd take my cyan and turquoise mix and come up from the bottom corner and just sort of work that up.
You better work it, girl.
You better work. And you might have spots where you can see your brush strokes, and you just need to hit those with another little pop of paint. If you feel like, oh, my yellow's gotten, or my yellow ochre's gotten a little too green. On the monitor I'm looking at, it looks kind of Kelly green, but I think what you guys are seeing looks more like how I see it in person, and it's not Kelly green at all. Yeah, it looks like the lower one. So now I might wash my brush. When I come in with more paint at this point, I'm never putting a huge amount on my brush, because we do need it to dry enough that we can start drawing cotton blooms and stems on it in a little while. So you don't have to, your layers can be thin layers working towards the finished background, but you don't have to do thick layers for every single layer. I'm going to grab a little plain turquoise. That's kind of fun to throw in there after we've already got all the other bits going on.
Bits and bobbles.
And if you do notice that when you're painting something on, it's pulling paint scraping paint under it away. That just means your canvas needs to dry for even just 5 minutes to allow the paint to become tacky. And when it becomes tacky, then it will let another coat of paint adhere to it. So, one thing, I know you guys have seen us do this, me in particular. It's a fun thing I like to do. I started to do it on my original one, and then I stopped, but I thought, you know, I'll show people that they could do this if they want. You'd want to clean and dry your brush, or even better if you have a dry brush hanging around that's about the same size. And you can take, and when this paint's wet, you can manipulate it a little by just dragging sideways. I'm trying to think what painting we did this with. Or you can drag this way. You can do both. When I would do a lot of abstract backgrounds, this is the sort of thing I would do. It's a kind of a nice way to let it blend without pushing the color in too much. But right now I'm getting a little bit too much going on down here. I want it to rest a bit. I will add more, but I want it to rest. And I want to go back and start blending things better around here. Okay.
I'm having fun.
That's good. It should be fun. Actually, it's looking really good. What are you doing? You're using a little brush.
I'm working outside the box a little bit.
Okay. I'll let you do that, I guess. So I am going to, thinking here, I have a lot of this wet beige color. I'm going to go back to that. Not a lot of paint on the brush. You know, you can see if I turn it, I don't have a big 3D glob sticking out. It's just a little here. I'm going to start up in the beige color. So this is helping me knock off excess paint without changing the colorization of the painting too much. And now I need some more. And I'll just bring some of this down. Not all the way down to here. This is still really wet, and I said that needed to rest a little bit. So just down into the outside edge, right immediately around the moonlight. Anything you want to soften, just use a little bit of this and glaze over. Like here's some areas that could be softened up just by glazing over. Brush strokes all different directions.
Boom.
Think of this as like color just sort of polluting.
Ooh, wait a minute, what happened?
I don't know. We're still on there, right?
Yeah, let's see if it kicks off on the... It kicked off.
Oh.
I wonder if this camera kicked off. Hold on. We'll be back.
So I'll talk. So using this pale beige, while we fix our video, do you have to switch cameras?
No.
Okay.
I think the camera is not plugged in to charge.
So it ran out of juice because it hasn't been charged in a while.
I think that might be the case.
So hold on a minute. He's got a cord somewhere.
It's not plugged in.
We are coming back shortly. In seconds, mere seconds.
It's back. Sorry, my bad, my bad. It happens.
It's always your bad, Paul. Always your bad.
Yes, that's what I've been being told for the last 20 years.
So I'm just kind of melting this color into the other. I love right here where it just blends so nicely. Will you be doing a May the 4th kit, or will it be part of the video series? Probably not a kit. I don't think we're supplied up enough for that.
No.
I think we might be able to have a few available, but I think my worry would be getting them shipped to people in time because of
Shipping times.
shipping times. Yeah. But we could probably do our May the 4th painting that would have mostly our other colors that you already have, Kim. Thinking, did you have an idea of what you were going to do?
Not yet, but somebody was really begging for some kind of a Kylo Ren and Rey fusion painting.
That's modern Star Wars.
So you want to hear something really weird about Star Wars? So we of course grew up with the original Star Wars, and that's our Star Wars, right? Millennials grew up with the Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith. That's their Star Wars.
Yeah.
They think that that's the better series.
Huh. Well, I guess, we probably would do that too.
Sure. And so then it brings in the question, like, the younger generation, do they think of the Rey
Grogu.
series?
I think, yeah, actually we need to do Grogu.
Oh,
I started a Grogu one year, and it just didn't. We ended up doing the Ewok that year, I think.
I think so.
Grogu would be fun. I agree.
I think Grogu is become the new standard bearer for Star Wars.
I'm going to bring some of this up in here to just lightly soften this. I don't want to eliminate it, but I want to soften the transition between the two colors. So I'm just glazing the smallest amount of paint on the edge, where the seam where the two colors meet. And down here, I have it a little bit too wet. So what's happening is my brush is really sticking to the canvas as I'm trying to add more color here. And it's not making me very happy. So I know that I need to wait just a little bit. I'm going to leave this alone. I know I keep saying that. This time I'm really going to do it, I promise. And then if you want to bring more bits of the light minty color back around the moon, you can see that here. That's optional. You might like it more like this, where it's just all light, then slowly fading into dark. So my goal next, when this dries a little bit more, is I want to bring some of this color down in here a little bit. But let's see what it would look like and how difficult it will be to add a really pale, minty, Bahama bluish turquoise around this area. Clean the brush. Go ahead and mix up your color. It's going to have a lot of white because we want to go easy here. And then maybe swipe your paintbrush off on a paper towel or on your palette. And let's start on the outside edge, just working inward a little. I feel like I need more turquoise in there. It's not really showing up. It's just kind of baby blue. Yeah, there we go.
The way my background's going, I'm not even sure I'm going to want to put the cotton blooms on.
You better, Paul.
I will.
So I'm bringing this, and you can even do this sort of thing. You can kind of swirl your brush around, just mash those bristles slightly and swirl it around. That helps blend the areas that you maybe want a little more blended. Canvas. Tweaky canvas.
Got ourselves a tweaker.
So it's just a gradual addition of paint, gradual transition of color. And then what I will do, some of this needs to be softened just in some areas. The whole area doesn't necessarily need to be softened. Actually, when I see it on the monitor, it looks pretty good. But I can see like this edge is kind of sharp, and I'd want to soften that. We are going to have more of a round moon, but I'll go back with some light beige and kind of soften that up. This is starting to dry finally. So I might bring in later bits. Grogu and Yoda. That would be cute. It does look like a star nebula. Now, if you see Paul's, can I show yours, Paul?
Yeah.
Or do you want people to wait?
No, I don't care.
Paul's really has a star nebula thing going on. And you can see why he said he doesn't necessarily know if he wants to do
Oh, that
it.
doesn't look as good on camera.
Actually, it looks like watercolor. That's really strange.
It doesn't
now
look
that
as
I
good
look
on
at
camera,
it.
though.
I think it is. Well, up there, but down here, let's look down. Yeah. I'm not going to wait for the delay. There we go. Yeah, that looks good. I know, I do love these colors together. They're great. And I love that throughout the whole painting, you can just be constantly manipulating it. Like, if you looked at this and thought, that's really grabbing all the attention, and you just soften that up, like, I'd come in with maybe some light turquoise and just very lightly glaze over some bits of it. And then if you need to add any of the darker blues back in, when I get to this point, a lot of times, unless I'm going back to using light beige, if I'm just using the blues, I don't necessarily wash my brush between, as long as it's mostly out of paint before I switch colors. I already painted all day today. I painted a wall in our downstairs bathroom. And I didn't have a roller, so it was all with a brush. Did you know that, Paul? I did it all with a brush. It was work.
That's commendable.
I was like, okay, if I decide to use a paint roller, I'm going to have to shower, get dressed, go to Home Depot or somewhere.
You do realize that there are a lot of people, women and men and everybody, that go into Home Depot without showering.
I'm not one of those. I'm not one of those. There's too many people I know in our little town of 30,000 people. Okay. So now I'm going to go back. This is nice and dry because I use such thin paint, but I want to soften that edge I talked about earlier. It's probably just could be left alone, but this is a back and forth background, and we're just going to go for it. I don't want a lot of paint on the brush. This, in fact, is probably too much. And I'm just glazing. I mixed a slightly warmer beige, so I added a little more yellow ochre to a small bit of it. Because I thought, let's see how that looks. And if it doesn't blend good or turns too greenish, I can always go back and add the lighter in and soften it. But here's where I might take this slightly warmer beige, so it's just got a little more yellow ochre and not a lot of paint on the brush. I might start bringing some of that down. In fact, it could make it even more vivid. So the bars on these canvases are kiln fired, the wood part, which keeps them nice and rigid, but sometimes some of these come in and they're just tweaked.
Okay.
So just extending some of that warmer beige tone out in here. I'm not going to do too much over here because let's think about this for a minute. We have white that has to show up against this background. So think about that as we're finishing the last bits of adding color. Is white going to show up against your background, or do you have too much of this color out here? So if you have too much of that color out here, then you might go back and bring in some darker so that your cotton blooms really pop. Has anyone ever been to an actual cotton field? I've always thought that would be the coolest thing to see. I know some of you guys live in areas where cotton will probably grow. It must be really like bamboo, because so much.
I don't know.
So many textiles are made from cotton, so it must be very regenerative.
I don't know.
So I felt like I wanted to clean my brush a little bit. It was getting maybe a little muddy. And again, I'm just gonna bring some. Oh, do you have some in the Florida? That's so cool. I bet they're so pretty. I was looking up photos when I made the thumbnail for our YouTube placement card for this video. And I found a really pretty picture of the cotton in the moon. You can see it on the placement card, the thumbnail or whatever. And yeah, it's just so pretty. Okay, I think just a little bit more of the pale beige up in here, and then we'll paint the moon on in its actual circular form, unless you already have a good one going and feel like you don't need to do that. Gonna use some of my warmer beige, maybe add a little more of the lighter to it. So for me, I feel like I need to make the moon area maybe just a tiny bit smaller. Mine stayed pretty big, and I want the moon to really show up over the top of it without being gigantic and taking away from the cotton. Cotton bowls that hold the cotton are super hard and very pointy. Yes. So my grandma, I remember, had an arrangement of dried cotton bowls with stems, and I was like, ouch. I always wanted to touch them because they look so cool. But yeah, if I remember, the stems are do the stems have little prickly things on them?
I think
I'm trying to remember. There was another thing she had, some other dried something or another that was super spiky that had very spiky stems too. I see those being used in a lot of dried arrangements, but mainly like they were in the 70s. Okay, time to refresh that. Let's zoom in real quick and have a look. You can see why I need to fix it. It's kind of turned into the shape of like SpongeBob SquarePants. And I need it to be round. So we're gonna see how that goes. I've really abused my paper towel tonight. It's down to where it's like completely soaked. So I'm gonna take pure white on the brush. You don't need a lot, but you do wanna work from the center out. And this is where, see how I'm sort of rounding the brush using the wide flat side. You can trace one of your circular objects at home, a Tupperware lid, or if you have one of these left over from an old kit. That one's really covered in paint. But you can sort of haze out the edges, and what I'm doing is just brushing around them and letting my brush run out of paint, and that's how you get the nice hazy edges. I will tell you, when I put this painting together, I thought, I want to have craters on the moon. And so I dabbed in some cyan. It was the cyan and turquoise mix, and dabbed it all over in like a pattern that would be like craters, thinking I can glaze over it and it will look fantastic. I will show you how it looked. I ended up doing layers and layers and layers of white over it so that I could be like, there's going to be no craters on this moon. It's just a big bright ball. Let me see so I can show you the picture so we can all have a good laugh. Okay. There we go. Look at that.
Interesting.
And that was one of those brush strokes where I just panicked at the moment. And I was like, no, I'm going to have to fix this. So yes, layers and layers and layers of white later. You can barely see it. Barely. Okay, let's zoom out. That looks good. I'm liking it. You can keep working on this background until the cows come home. You can go back to it later. You can completely change it. you can play around with it. It's fun. If you ever like just sit down and maybe you're not aiming towards anything in particular, but play around with blending colors this way, it is such a good exercise. I highly recommend it because you'll learn a lot. You'll learn what colors work and what ones don't. And the little experiments like that, that's what all the old masters used to do. In fact, a lot of their art that's selling for millions of dollars, they were experiments so that they could see, will this work for a painting I want to sell? It's kind of funny to think about that. Okay. So I could just keep going on it, but I'm going to make myself stop working on the background. And we'll do something fun for a minute. Have a look at your painting.
What are you talking about? This is all fun.
So see when I tilt it, you can see which spots are wet and which spots are drier. Like the whole thing is not dry at all, but I've got like some thick paint right here where it's really wet. Some spots over here that are, if I rub my hand on them, I don't really pick up anything, but they're just in the sticky phase. So I can paint over those, but I don't want to paint the cotton yet because the cotton, I want it to be pretty close to pure white. And then we do put some blue shading on it. Like, I love that, the way that looks. That was one of the things that the original painting that I did years ago lacked. It didn't have the shading. And I feel like the shading really brings out the individual little circles, little ball shapes that make up the whole thing. And so what I think I'll have us do now is the little smudgy stars or floaties that you see in the background, whatever you want them to be. They can be stars, they can be cottonwood from cottonwood trees blowing
thank you.
around. Paul's like getting triggered over here, getting PTSD. He has a really bad cottonwood allergy. I think the big trees they've been cutting down and chipping that have been making so much noise were cottonwood trees.
Oh, I hope so.
Really happy. Okay. So this is a fun thing that we've done for years and years. It's a whimsical thing that I love to do. I know a lot of you guys have done it with us before. You take your smallest brush. We're going to use the handle end. Just poke it right in your white paint. Stamp a dot. That's not big enough. I need a bigger, wetter paint dot. And then you use your finger and you just very lightly smudge it into a circle. And that one, I needed a bigger glob of paint because that ended up way too tiny. So I'm going to take a bigger glob. Smudge it around into a big glowing orb. Now these can get pretty big. Like some of the ones on my original, I have them pretty big. And it doesn't have to be a complete circle. You can go back and, you know, if you get one that's like, oh, it's oval or it looks weird. As long as it has soft edges, it doesn't have to be a complete circle. And then what I did is I went back and I just stamped a little dot in the middle. So then you've got this little glowing thing. And then I just fill in around these with lots of little single dots just to break up the pattern and make it look a little more whimsical. I'm not going to do those in this area because that's where let me zoom out just a little. That's where the cotton bolls are going to go. And I will fill in around them later once they're painted on. But I don't want to be in a situation where I'm having to paint a stem through a wet white star. So I'm going to do them up here, around here, and here. So you guys can do that along with me. A lot of times I'll just stamp a bunch of randos and then pick one that's maybe bigger and has wetter paint and smudge that into an orb. You don't have to do the orbs at all. You don't even have to do the little dots. You could do just the dots. Or you could do just the little orbs. Oh, a Scottish thistle. I'll have to look that up. Is it brown? I bet that's what it is. But it seemed like in the 70s and 80s they were used in a lot of wreaths and.
Probably still.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think that would be a good textural change from like if you had like a really floral wreath and you just threw a few of those in there.
It's an architectural thing.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite dried plants is the Chinese lantern plant. I love those, and they're just like these lacy little pods. It's funny though, you get like random things will trigger old memories like that. Like I probably wouldn't have ever thought about my grandma's funky dried flower arrangement if I hadn't done this painting. She always had stuff like that.
I always think of lotus stems too.
Yeah, those are weird looking with all the holes.
Mm-hmm.
People who have tryptophobia would be like, no, I don't like that at all. I found out through Greta telling me about all the phobias that there is one that I definitely have, and it's the submechanophobia. And that is like the fear of machinery type stuff under the water. Like, say, a sunken ship.
So we're never going to Honolulu, is what you're saying.
No, I wouldn't be afraid like standing over and looking at it, but if I was in the water with it.
Oh.
It's just it's not even a fear really, it's just a weird feeling. Like this isn't right. This shouldn't be like this. Well, look who's here. This kind of looks like it's the Pillars of Creation or the Helix Nebula, not to be confused with Nebula from Guardians of the Galaxy. Some of those nebulas are really cool. I follow the NASA Instagram or the Hubble. I think it was a Hubble Instagram, and then they have the new one too, which I follow. But for some reason, I don't ever see any of the posts. But I love like some of the galaxies, like the Sombrero Galaxy.
It's cool. Not real.
The Cat Eye Galaxy. There's like a Witch Hat Galaxy. So for those who didn't hear earlier, I'm leaving this area open right now without the little magical dots because I need to paint cotton stems and bowls there. And I don't want to be painting through a white wet star and changing the color of the stems. So we're going to just leave that. I do love the way this looks, I have to say. It looks really pretty. Oh, let's look at Paul's. Can I show it?
Mm-hmm.
Paul has done fantastical stuff, as usual. This could be like an amoeba under a microscope, too.
Totally.
It could be a virus.
So much glare.
It's a virus. It's COVID. I love it, though. It's cool.
It's how I felt yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
It does look like a frying egg. This is your paint. This is your paint on drugs.
We'll never forget that commercial. The traumatizing commercial from the
Any
80s
questions?
and 90s. This is your brain. Cracks an egg. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? There's a lot of fear mongering.
Yeah, can you do that over easy, please?
Okay, because not all drugs will do that. But I'm thinking like cannabis and that kind of thing. But I'm sure they meant other drugs, right?
I think the whole that whole movement was a weird thing.
It was very weird.
Like if you go back and read about it a bit.
Wasn't that Nancy Reagan's thing? Did she start that? She started the Just Say No, I think.
Yeah.
I was trying to remember. Okay. Yep. Daniel just said it. Mm-hmm. So I want to draw the paint stems. I want to draw paint. I want to speak. I want to paint the stems on now. And I don't do a solid black. I want to mix black and yellow ochre. And then we go back later and we make these yellow ochre highlights. So it shouldn't look any bit of yellow ochre when you first mix it together. It's going to be kind of a soft black, almost brown. Okay. Dip your brush in the water.
Then there was the DARE program, too.
Put some water next to the black, and I want you to stir a little black into it, because we want this pretty liquefied. Not so much that if you dip your brush in it, it's going to drip off your brush, but liquefied more than straight out of the tube. And now I'm going to scrape off some of my yellow ochre and mix that in. So you're aiming for a dark brown. The color of Scottish
thistle.
That's what we want. This is what color they were. And you might even mix a little more water in. And we're going to paint these stems on, you want to use either of your two smallest brushes. So you can use this little round detail brush if you want. You see it's got the little pointy, or you can use this one, but you'll want to use the thin edge of it. Now that seems to be my favorite. What I usually do is a combination of the two. I'll get the base stems done with this brush, this flat one, and then I'll come in with the round small brush to get some of the smaller twiggy stems. But watch these beer commercials for the Super Bowl kids. Remember Teens Against Drunk Driving? Tad isn't as sketchy as Mothers Against Drunk Driving. I don't remember that one.
What, Mothers Against Drunk Driving?
No, I remember that one, but I don't remember Tad, Teens Against Drunk Driving. Rockers Against Drunk Driving. Okay, let's dip this in water. Stir some water in there again. Maybe add a little more black. I felt like mine got maybe a little too light, but I don't know that it matters. And let me pull up my picture on my phone so I can, I've got a ton of people texting me. Stars people.
Are they texting both of us or just you?
Just me.
They don't text me
Wanting
anymore.
things. Oh. Okay, so see how I drew the stems first, but not all the stems. And then I started adding the cotton blooms at the top. So let's just do a few stems and we'll work from those. So
Should we
starting
work on
at
these
the bottom,
systemically?
systemically work on the stems. Let's look. It starts way down here, like maybe this is 1.5 inches over. Make a mark. That's always nice to just kind of commit to that. And I'm just going to use the thin edge of the brush and go up. Maybe start curving this way. There's my first stem, and I'll just clean it up a little bit.
Were Rockers Against Drunk Drivers rad?
They were so rad. I would assume that's what it was, rad. And then maybe I'll make one that just sort of goes up and starts leaning this way because we want to be able to fill our canvas area and have them be different heights. And there was something I was going to say. I felt like it was important, but it must not have been. They do, oh, I know, it's, so you want to sort of fan out the way a bouquet would. So think of like, this is in a vase, it's real compacted, and then they start fanning out. So I'm going to make one now that goes out this way, really heading up towards the moon. Don't be scared, just don't think about it too much. Like, don't overthink it. They can be slightly wavy. And then how about one right here? How tall does this one go? Make this one taller. So that's a good start. Looks like a creepy skeletal hand. But I do want to make this, like I like how this one, it looks like maybe there's several stems together, so you see the difference. This is kind of skinny down here. So I am going to just thicken this up just a bit down here. And you could do just, I'm going to do it just so that you guys know that it's okay. I could do a whole nother one that even crosses over. I don't want you to be scared to do that. Because in nature, plants cross over each other all the time. They're always invading each other's territory. And then I might take my littlest brush, dip it in the water just to refresh the bristles, dip it in your liquefied paint, and let's see, I like to do some little almost broken branchy sort of things that go off, and then some of these will be long and have more cotton on them. Okay, let's see, what do I want to do with you? I'm going to give you a little broken off stick. Here too. Okay, that's a start. You can see they don't go up as tall as these do, and that is only because we bring the top of these stems up to our cotton. So let's have a look at what I'm talking about. See how these are floating above? See that little space right there? That is so that our cotton blooms do not turn this color mixed with white, which would be a tragedy. We don't want that. So let's let's start thinking about our pure white paint. We'll tint it a little bit with blue for shading in just a bit, but we don't have to do that yet. Having technical difficulties, Daniel. I'm just cleaning all my brushes real quick because I noticed I had them all in the water. So the brush I like to use for this is my number 8 flat brush. You could use a round brush if you want. I have just found that over the years I've gotten used to using flat brushes. Everybody has their own preference. What you do is not wrong. What I do is not wrong. We just have preferences. And this number 8 is about 1/4 inch wide. I feel like it's a good size for what we're doing. Had to take a sip of my Simply Spiked lemonade. It's good.
Not a sponsor?
Good stuff. So I'm going to pick up a little paint, not a huge amount. Let me go ahead and zoom in. Let's do one right about here. So what I do is I'm going to do this shape. So you can draw an oval first, or if you feel comfortable just starting from the middle and swirling it into an oval, more power to you. And then I'll do one this way too. And then this way too. So they see how it makes kind of like a little bowl shape? Cotton bowl. I meant bowl like the dish. Now I want them to be kind of soft on the top. So I'm going to wipe off as much paint as I possibly can. You can see there's hardly any paint on my brush. See how I'm like painting my hand and hardly any's coming off. And I just want to soften up the edges of this by running my brush outward. And you'll be able to see the background through this. That's when we come in later and we add more bright white. Oops, let me get on the camera. See that bright white there? Right now, if that wasn't on there, you would see this. And I'll do, let's see, how about we do one over here? Oops, I need a little more paint than that. This one's gonna maybe disappear into the moonlight because I did put it up there. It'll show up, but it's not gonna be quite as vivid as some of the others. And you can make them bigger. I could make more. Think of it like almost like a lotus flower shape, actually. And then wipe the paint off. Haze this outward into the background to soften the edges. You can soften the edges down here too. You could totally do that. It looks really good rather than just a really opaque shape. Like you cut construction paper out. And these are probably dry. Like my stems are dry now. Down here I can see, oh sorry, down here I can see it's a little wet, but up here they're dry. So I will plant one right here. Now this one I'm going to do is just a little bud. So anytime you have a little space to fit between, it's good to just do a little bud. And here too I've got, this one I actually overlapped into the stem quite a bit because I wanted to fit it in there. So just draw these out however feels comfortable to you. If it's more comfortable to just do what I was doing where you just swirl your brush around in a circle, or if it's more comfortable to actually draw the whole shape of the thing. You can even make some little curved ones back here. Do what you feel the most comfortable with, because there's more ways to get to the final destination than just doing it my way. Now I need to haze out the tops of these. So I'm kind of just mashing my brush and swirling it around to make the top of it less sharp. And more, you see that one especially is really hazed out around the edges. Students Against Drunk. Yeah, you're right. That's what it was. Students Against Drunk Driving. Sad. So remember, these are going to start off being somewhat see-through because that allows us to come back later with bright white and some light blue shading and make these a little more detailed. So right now they are lacking in detail. And yeah, definitely have some overlap the stems when necessary. I feel like this one needs to be a little taller. And you'll have areas where you can see through the stems. You can see through the cotton to see the stem. That will be taken care of. Let's see. I feel like I don't like this one. I want to make it bigger. Do I have enough or do I need one more? That's the question. I'll do a little baby there. Now I feel like I have enough. Do I have an odd number? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I do have an odd number. You almost always end up with odd numbered things. I think it's just over the years I've gotten to where it comes automatically. Unless I counted wrong. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, I have 11. So this one got a touch too close to the moon. It's touching it, but that's okay. I'm going to not worry about it. I think it'll be okay in the end. But let's see what we're going to do next. Doesn't really matter. This is where we start adding the bright white back in. They end up looking so cute. So you want to use the same brush. Now you can load up a thick amount of paint. Well, I mean, not like huge thickness, but more than what we were using. And let me zoom in. I'll do this one right here so you can see up close and personal what I'm going to do. So think about this as the moon up here. I know you guys can't see it off camera. That's your light source. So all of your highlights are going to be on this side. So I'm going to do a little curve shape there. And then one, let's see. Sometimes I'll look at it and be like, oh, it's naturally kind of coming out like in a nice shape. And like you could put one right here. So then you've got the see-through part is providing some nice shading that was kind of unintentional, but it's there. And I'll do this one here. For these little ones, maybe knock some excess white off your brush if needed. So this one, the moon is going to really kiss the top edges of these curved little nubbins. I'm sure they have a name. Like, I've been studying herbology slowly in an online course, and all the flower parts have names. It's kind of fun to memorize them. If I can remember them. If I can't remember them, it's not fun. Yeah, so then it looks like several little, like, you know, the household cotton balls? It looks like several little cotton balls make up this whole thing. Like, this one needs a little more. And they just sort of curve inward. Almost like a little claw, like a little fist. Little round baby fist. Are you doing the cotton? Oh, yeah, you are.
Of course. I'm going to leave it out.
I wasn't sure. You said you didn't know.
I was joking.
This is definitely one of those things when you're up close to it, you don't see it as much like the three-dimensional part, but when you step away from it, you can see it a lot more. Like for me, when I did the original painting, I didn't really see it till I had left the room, let it dry, and then came back to get it and take a photo of it for the website. And it was like, that looks really good. That looks better than I thought it did. That bit there, that's the flowery part. Below that is the stemmy part. Inside it, the insidey bits. I wonder if I would score on my test. My final. Two more left to highlight. Now if you have like the parts where some of the stems are showing through, you can give them a nice opaque bit of white. You saw someone painting a realistic He-Man painting. That's kind of cool, actually. I found a clip of a He-Man video game that it must have come out like shortly before Mortal Kombat came out.
No,
or
I would say that's like probably
you
even
think
before then.
Before? I mean, one of them was based off the other. There was maybe not. I don't know. There were some similarities. Looks good so far. What to do? What to do? Let's do the thinking here. I know I add the blue after I did the claw parts that hold the calyx. I think it's called the calyx. That's the part that holds the plant to the stem. I could be wrong, but I think it's the calyx. So let's do some pale blue shading. So it's not a lot. You can see it here. And like I said, I initially added the stems and the calyx part first. And then I came in and did the blue shading, and I thought I ended up having to go back and touch up a lot of the stems because the blue shading overlapped them. So I thought this is something that I think we could do before we add that part. Just change the step order a little. And it's not a ton. You don't want to do a ton of it. I feel like my cotton blooms are way smaller this time around. Let me fix that. That's an easy fix. This one I need to bring close to the stem anyway. Maybe that was the problem. A lot of them I didn't have attached to the stem yet.
Oh, leg cramp. Here it comes.
There, I just wanted a couple Gigantor. Okay, so I've already got white on my brush. Let's take a little cyan or light blue, whatever you're working with, primary blue, phthalo blue, just blue. Pick a blue. And let's make a sky blue color. Let's see if that is enough. Yeah, actually I think a little more cyan for me. I could use turquoise, but I chose blue because turquoise is all throughout the background, and I thought these could end up getting lost. So I have blue down here, but not up here. So we'll just go with this. You don't want a lot of paint on your brush here. And I'm just going to just come in on the opposite side of some of these curves. I know that one I did wrong. And just add a little bit of shading, and we can always come back in and add more white if it feels like it's too much. I honestly hardly added much of any in the original. Just thinking of the parts that are away from the moon for the most part. underside would be good. And I could come in easily with white, wash the brush, and just sort of soften some of these up by glazing over them with a little white. So they're still there. They're still showing up. They're just not as harsh. So if you need to do that, maybe you used a light enough blue. I apparently did not. And I think these will fit in nicely when we get the stems painted on too. Okay, I think that is pretty good. Soften up a few spots. And let's wash the brush. I want to see that He-Man painting. It sounds cool. Some artists are so good at doing that realistic. I don't really have a lot of self-patience. I don't know if I could ever get to the point of doing that, partly because of that. Okay, so let's go ahead and use the handle of our brush, and we'll dot in stars in between so we don't leave this space out, and then make sure that if needed, you can smudge a few of them out. Give it that nice little magical fluffy touch, like fairy dust.
One of the productions we have coming up this summer is a short written by Shel Silverstein called All Cotton, and I keep thinking about that.
Here we go. Here's our poster for it. Actually, that's that would be a neat idea. Okay, so one thing I did on here that's completely optional, and it is something I did to my original painting from 2016. I added little shimmery dots at the top of each of these just for fun, just to give it something a little extra. You don't have to do it if you don't want to do that little extra thing. But if you do want to, I just use the handle of the brush and just started at the top. And
it's all the pollen making its way out to your nose to give you allergies.
Yeah, so I kind of cluster them together and then trail off into a smaller cluster at the top. One's kind of going to get lost a little. I guess, do I do? Yeah, I did do them on the buds, the little tiny ones. Reese is trying to remember the name of our drag show. And I can't remember. It's like Nottingham something.
Nottingham Sleigh Cabaret.
No, it was different.
It was
Nottingham Pride Brunch or something. I can't remember.
Wasn't it Naughty in Nottingham?
Yes.
Maybe we shouldn't call it naughty. That gives off a bad stigma.
Yeah, it does. We can talk to them about that. Yes, for you local peeps, we are doing that. It should be fun. Okay.
Okay, it didn't work on mine. I mean, I did it, but it just doesn't really show up enough to make a difference.
The dots?
Yeah.
Oh, they show up, though. I see them. I see them. I see you. Okay, so let's go ahead now and paint in the part that really makes these look like cotton. And that's these little spiky things. And if you've ever touched one, they are very sharp. Like the ends of these are very pokey and sharp. And they're not pretty. Like when you see them, I looked at pictures of them online. I usually will try to do that when I'm when I'm doing a painting of something that exists in nature. And they're not the most attractive little calyx. There's a lot of other plants that have much prettier ones, but it does end up making it look like cotton. So think of it like scary claws that are holding these little baby fists into the stem. There, that'll help you visualize it. Okay, so we want to use the same color we did on the stems. That was black with a little racia in it and some water. I've got a bit left, but I think I need to mix some more, because I know myself, and I'll try to make it work, and I'll be milking it to the last drop. I sometimes am lazy about mixing color.
Is that why you mix so much?
Yeah, probably. But let's compare our palettes, because we haven't done that in a long time. So let me zoom out a bit. I'm the very clean one at home, and Paul's the very messy one. But with painting, I don't know what happens. I don't know why I'm so...
The funny thing is you're the clean painter, too.
It's true. Oops. Okay, so I've got my littlest brush. Let's just do a little one here. How did I do the buds? Okay, so the little buds I'll just do almost like a V shape, but you can make it kind of curved so it's not such a rigid little V. And then this one thing that's helpful is you can trace the bottom of the cotton thing with like almost like little arms. Reminds me of like Cogsworth from Beauty and the Beast. He had those like little arms like that. And then you can make one that like comes up. They're kind of shaped like leaves, so they're kind of wide in the middle and then go to a little point. Some of them even curl. Some of them had little sharp things. I think that's what you were talking about, Kim, earlier. And then where it attaches to the stem, you can make that part, and it does have a name. I can't remember it from my plant studies. Better get back into that. It's so easy to forget when you get away from stuff. So just make sure it hugs the cotton and then hugs down onto the stem so everything's held together. The little thorny things, you don't have to add them. They're not pretty. That's one of the things that makes the stem part not super pretty, is the thorny parts. But, you know, thorny parts are there. You can add them or you can leave them off. I do like to sometimes make these like sort of curve out a bit, because they do. And they're sort of twisty. So yeah, sometimes you'll see a real skinny one.
You know what they kind of remind me of?
And then other times, what?
Tomatillos.
Yeah.
Like the
Other
paper.
times you might see like a wider one. But I always end up having to sort of curve it into the stem to make it look right. So you can see what I'm talking about. See how I curve that one into the stem and that one and that one? This one, it just goes straight up, and then suddenly you've got this little claw-like thing. But you do need to just make it integrate. So it's more of a transition. That one I got a little big. I guess I was trying to explain it too much. And again, the little buds, you can just do a couple, one on each side. If you have room, you could do like a baby one coming up here. It's about to explode into bloom. That doesn't look good. Curve that. some reason this particular stem is really small and skinny. Doesn't necessarily look like it would support that big of a cotton bowl. So I'm gonna make it a little wider. A little more robust. All right, let me scooch my canvas over. 3 more left, I think. You can turn your canvas to whatever direction makes it easier for you. And I do have my paint watered down quite a bit to the point where it's not drippy, but it is liquefied enough that I don't have to redip my brush every single time I do a tiny brush stroke. One thing too to keep note of when you're using a small brush like this and you're doing repeated steps of the same thing, the tip of your bristles can end up getting loaded up with a little ball of paint like that, and that can make it hard to do these fine little detail points. I mean, they're not that fine, but they're small. So what I will do occasionally, you can see I did it there, is I will take and pull and twist my brush. So then that knocks off that extra paint. You've got a pointy brush again. And you can redip the very tip of the bristles back in some of the paint. I keep getting off camera here. And so you're not out of paint on your brush, but just keep that in mind when you're doing small detail work, that if you're doing the repeated steps of the same thing, same color, same brush, the tip of your brush can just gradually get a little ball of paint on there that the next time you try to paint something delicate and pointy, it doesn't work, and you're like, why? All of mine are looking the same. I might have to add a few little thorns to throw it off. One left. You might have to refresh your paint with a little water at this point too, because it does evaporate really fast. Suddenly you're back to that thick paint that's hard to work with for details. One's getting very stemmy. Almost done. Almost. Looks a little different from the original, as expected, but pretty close. So we need to highlight our stems with a little bit of yellow ochre, so you can see that. You see the highlights where I put them? And what that does is it just adds a kind of a bronzy feel to the color of the stems, so they're not just, don't feel so black. And it can soften things up. Like if you've got some harsher bits, the highlights can actually do this visual trick where it softens them up. I did briefly think about bringing another smaller stem coming up here, And you absolutely could do that if it felt like it's really right heavy. You could do just to, that's what you always want, is to keep, when someone looks at your painting, you want to just keep their eyes moving across the canvas, so that, like, there are some paintings where you do have a visual pop right in the middle, or even off to the side, but I know having a balance is very good too. So if you wanted to bring something in on this side, like, hey, there's more going on here, there's not just this single stand, or even like some blooms down here where the stems go off the bottom of the canvas, just so that you have like a different weight going on here. Okay, let's highlight. So for your highlights, you can use either of your two small brushes, something small that feels comfortable. I'm going to start down in here because that's kind of where I started, and so with the brown, so that should be dry-ish. Dry-ish. I just dipped the brush right in the yellow ochre, or raw sienna, whatever you're using, and just put some very simple broken up highlights. So you can see I didn't do a full line here. I just did one line and then another. It's like suggesting highlights without overly committing. I would say put them where feels right to you. And the cool thing is if you get too many and you think they're distracting, which once it dries, I don't think it'll be distracting because it's such a muted color against a really dark color. But if you felt like you got too much, just go back with your dark brown and soften some of them up. Technically, these are not connected. Like, I mean, these aren't, what was I talking about? Technically, these are not necessarily in the moonlight, but what we're talking about here is maybe there's some reflective light happening. I feel like I have too much paint. Yeah, there's reflective light all over, because look at the size of that moon. Oh, I apparently dragged my whole wrist in paint. I was wearing a lot of latex paint earlier. Yes, paint. I know I just said wearing and latex in the same sentence. That sounded weird.
Something you want to tell me?
I can't paint walls without getting so much paint everywhere. And like, I even stepped in it and tracked it all over the bathroom floor. And I'm like, I even had a drop cloth. And when I folded the drop cloth to fold it inside together so it wasn't like getting paint on the floor, so the paint wasn't on the outside of the drop cloth, you know what I mean? So you could kind of fold it together. It still got on the floor. But luckily, latex paint, when it's fresh and you have like Clorox wipes, comes right off the hard whatever floor we have.
Vinyl
floor, yeah. There we go. I think I'm good. I think I'm ready to sign it up. I was tempted to put something over here just to show you, but I won't keep you watching my channel so long. Let's see. Let's pick a color to sign. I think I'll do a pale turquoise.
Copycat.
Is that what you did?
I haven't
You didn't
done
even
it.
sign yours yet.
That's what I was going to do. I was going to say.
So when you do sign your painting, little brush and some liquefied paint, that will get you where you need to go. And yes, look at my hands. Wow, this is a really painty experience. These are from smudging little stars around. Are we ready to see yours?
I don't know.
Oh, I like it. That looks really good. Oh, what was that?
That was only our
it was the zoomer.
really expensive zoomer machine.
Sound like a lot of plastic, Paul. So you see how very different our styles are. And the person who's not teaching gets to go a lot extra. But Paul definitely has more of a natural approach. I use a lot more paint and a lot more liquefied paint. But it's kind of fun to see both. This is actually a really good painting of yours.
Thank you.
I like it. I don't really see you do flowers very often.
I've done flowers
Or anything
before.
like that. Like, I'm trying to think when you did flowers last.
Crocus Pocus.
Yeah, I like this better than Crocus Pocus, though.
Yeah.
I actually like the height of yours and the size. So I like how it comes all the way to the top of the canvas. And it fills this area really nicely. Mine felt really small. I don't know if it's smaller than the original. Let's look. Yeah, it's a little bit smaller.
It's one whole bloom shorter.
Yeah, so keep that in mind. I know a lot of you guys watch the video first, and then you come back and do the painting and watch it a second time while you're painting. Keep that in mind. You can totally approach it with much larger cotton balls. And Paul's are, like mine are kind of more defined, like you see how they're really curved in like that. And Paul's are definitely more of a,
All I did,
like a popcorn ball almost.
yeah, I just, instead of drawing it the way you did, I just dabbed.
And your shading, it looks like you used kind of a brownish.
I added a little bit of the brown.
Yeah, because your
the
stems
turquoise.
are a lot more brown than, what colors did you use to make your brown? Same?
Black and cyan,
Yeah.
cyan ochre.
Yeah. Both came out awesome. Hope you have a wonderful time with Greta. Thank you. Yeah, we've got plans. She's got a lot filled in one day. So tattoo appointment midday and then like at lunchtime. Then she wants me to take her to our favorite dim sum restaurant, which is like, I don't know, how many miles away is that?
As far opposite side of town as you can be, just
like
about.
in Portland, there's the Columbia
It's
or
like
the Willamette River that divides
It's probably 15 miles.
the west side and the east side. So it like the tattoo appointment is far east of the river. The dim sum place is far west of the river.
Probably, and we're like kind of halfway in between.
Yeah, down south a little more. And then we are after that, she's having 6 or 7 friends over with cake and probably video games and stuff. So it's gonna be a day. But I guess you only turned 18 once.
Right? All right. I'm bringing it back.
Okay. That was fun. I enjoyed doing this one. I thought it would be one that I was like, this is probably gonna be done really early, but it's I don't know,
So this
7 to
totally
9.
just encouraged me to maybe that we should do a big nebula painting.
Yeah, you can teach it.
Yeah.
I don't know what you did. I saw you using the small brush along the edges of some of this to define it. And it almost took on like a marbled look.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wanted it to do.
So that's a cool thing. And it's just all experimentation. Like, how does this work?
Well, and like putting these like little bit darker parts in there, it was because I started seeing that develop and I was like, oh, I want to
Oh, and another thing,
more.
You added like black
Just a little
down
bit.
here where I've got just the dark blue, so
just a little bit.
it's kind of fun to see. Okay, well, I guess May the 4th. I'm thinking Gogh is probably the way to go. We'll
I think
see.
so, yeah.
We'll see if anything pops up differently, or you suddenly remember, oh, but I really want to paint this guy.
Yeah.
It's Jar Jar Binks. We're all painting Jar Jar Binks.
I've had so much on my mind
Just
the last
kidding.
few months. The idea of like Star Wars is pretty far back in my mind right now.
Yeah. Well,
But
we'll get
so
it done.
Grogu's a good one.
So on May the 4th, we have a live class at night where we're teaching in person. Not a huge amount of people signed up, but enough that they won't cancel the class. So I think we're going to have to stream that one either the day before or earlier in the day, like maybe when we come down to pack up for the, like maybe a morning class.
Yeah, and we could also film the video and just have it post live on the 4th. I mean, post on
I know
the 4th.
people like to join live though.
Yeah.
So, okay, we're going to get out of here and see you guys May the 4th or 3rd, but probably the 4th because it's May the 4th.
everybody.
Ciao.